Andy Baskin of News Channel 5 in Cleveland, Ohio, also on 92.3 The Fan. You can find him on Twitter at Andy_Baskin. Always appreciate him squeezing us in between the radio and TV gigs. And Andy, what is the latest on this Kevin Love injury? How long is he going to be out?
It sounds like he's out for the rest of the season. At least that's what the Cavaliers are going at with this. David Griffin talking and letting us know that he is done for the season. So for the most part, you'd be very, very surprised if he comes back, even late in the playoffs.
Sorry to
interrupt. If they make it that far.
How much are they going to miss him?
Well, I mean, you're going to miss. He's a significant part of this team. He's been playing very well of late. He's been fitting into the offense. They figured out in the Boston series really how to get him involved, and he was big in Game 3. And they will miss him, but they will miss him. I can't downplay that. But the Cavaliers will play next man up, and they've got plenty of guys on the bench that will hopefully try to fill in. No one has all the same tools as Kevin Love, but you've got Sean Marion on the bench that'll provide some defense. Tristan Thompson's been outstanding. In fact, plenty of times this season in the fourth quarter, they've gone to Tristan rather than Kevin when they're trying to close out a game. So there are other options. Mike Miller is here. He hasn't played that much, and James Jones, too. So both those guys can shoot the three and maybe try to give you a little bit. They are a little bit older, but you've got some age and experience on the bench. I think it's like 7 rings sitting on the bench combined for the players that have, hundreds of playoff games and experience. That's why they went out and got those guys in the offseason.
Andy Baskin out of Cleveland with Armen and Levack. Andy, what about the notion that Kevin Love, all year long, all we heard about from the national feed was he's not fitting in and he's not liked and he doesn't get along. You're there and you're telling us he's going to make a big impact with him not being there. So obviously, did this thing just eventually click and work in the postseason with Kevin Love?
Well, I think they all stepped it up, and I also think they were playing him closer to the basket. I think he was getting closer to the basket when the playoffs started, and you could see it towards the last couple of games of the regular season when they were using him. So I think that added with the fact that Kevin was looking forward to making a playoff run, and this was his first playoff run, so no one could say, Kevin Love hasn't been in the playoffs before. You're done with that question. Same with Kyrie Irving. Those guys have now been in the playoffs. Now, Kyrie and LeBron get their chance to keep moving on. I think this team is going to be challenged. I read an article in USA Today saying the Cavaliers are in big trouble. Come on, are you serious? They still have LeBron James. They still have Kyrie Irving. And, the trade they made in the middle of the season was big time with Moskoff, Shumpert, and Smith. So this team, yes, it hurts that they've lost Kevin Love, but I think as long as you have LeBron James on the floor, and I think the folks in Cleveland realized that from 2007 when he single-handedly put a team in the NBA Finals on his back, I think they realize it here, too. It's not the end of the world the way USA Today would have you believe.
Now, what are the odds that Kevin Love returns next year?
Well, he's got the option. I still think when you look at his options, his best option is to opt back in next year and to say, okay, I'm going to do one more year with the Cavs and we'll figure this thing out. But it's a business, and I think if any city on earth understands the notion of a business, it's the city of Cleveland, knowing what happened with LeBron one time and then feeling the good side of it again when LeBron came back. So Kevin's got a lot of things to think about, and how he fit in here this year, what he'll be able to do next year, how healthy will he be next year, what's going to happen with his shoulder, is he going to need surgery? He's got a lot of things going on in his mind right now, and for Kevin Love, first and foremost, the business of basketball says that Kevin Love LLC needs to get healthy to figure out what he can do next. And I think if you weigh out all the options on paper, you would think opting back into the Cavaliers is a possibility, but you never know. And especially in this town, you just never know. But the ball's in his court. If he wants to opt back in, or even opt out and try to figure out a way to stay here in Cleveland, I'm sure that they would love to have him stay here.
I love every time we have Andy Baskin on out of Cleveland, Ohio, of News Channel 5 and 92.3 The Fan. He always uses that line, especially in this town. Who knows, man? Who knows with this town? Kelly Olynyk, that goofy-looking white boy of the Boston Celtics who pulled the arm of Kevin Love. Is he atop the hit list in Cleveland right now?
There are people really upset. I think they're upset that he only got 1 game suspension in the regular season next year, but I might be in the minority. I think it was kind of a basketball play up until the point where he realized it wasn't a basketball play. And when he kind of just went the little extra effort to make sure that Kevin Love wasn't going to be able to go to the basketball to try to pick up that loose ball, I think he may have just crossed the line a touch. And that crossing the line of touch was enough to pull his arm out of his socket. I don't think of him traditionally as a guy that does stuff like that. I think the punishment actually is pretty fair. I think it was part of a game. He went a little bit too far, and Kevin Love, I mean, he's done for the season. Folks here want him, suspended for half the year next year, or if the Cavaliers don't win an NBA championship, they're going to want to blame him forever. Look, it was a game that was very physical. Kelly, I'm sure, was getting yelled at left and right from the coaching staff who said, you guys need to be more physical. You need to be more physical. We've got to start doing some things to try to be just even a player in this series, just try to win one game, let alone try to win a series in Boston. So, look, it was a game. I think we've all played sports before. I think we all know where the line is. I think he went across the line a little bit, and the league clearly thought something was there because at least they gave him one game.
Now, speaking of, the physicality of that game, J.R. Smith throws the punch. How bad does his suspension hurt with the loss of Love? Is it even worse now?
I think it hurts. It's that other shooter that they had that they needed on the floor, and J.R. has been great since he's been here. People laughed when he first came here and said, "There's nothing to do here in Cleveland," so now I'm focusing on basketball. Well, that's great because you helped this team become the second seed in the East, especially after a really, really slow start. I think they'll miss his outside shooting, especially in the first two games. He's the other option on the floor. I don't know exactly how David Blatt's going to play it out when they go to a new starting five in the next series, which, by the way, the Bulls don't look as unbeatable as everyone around here, especially in Cleveland, the Bulls, you're all worried about the Bulls. The Bulls are going to do this. Well, meanwhile, the Bulls need to take care of the Bucks. And if you watch the game last night, that you'll see that maybe the Bucks are beatable, and they're still struggling with the Bucks. So let's see what happens in that one. But Smith is what he is, and when he gets hot, man, he is almost unstoppable.
Andy Baskin out of Cleveland, and Andy, it's funny because here in the New York sports world, we see J.R. Smith throw the backhand, and we go, man, thought he would have been, pulling out the clown pants routine a little earlier than this. So there's no regrets in Cleveland yet as to why did we bring this guy in town.
Absolutely not. No one's regretting it. I don't think any. Look, what he did was stupid. There's no question about it. I don't think in a million years that even when you're out of control and you're mad and you're trying to backhand somebody to get out of your way after he shoved his elbow all the way through your back and up your throat and back out your stomach again to push you across the lane on what should have been called a flagrant foul not once but twice prior to the incident. You still can't lose control, and that's the one thing about LeBron that I think he's instilled in most of the guys on this team. You just can't lose control. He lost control and did something really stupid. And even if his arm would have been down and would have caught him in a rib or even closer to the stomach, it never would have been as devastating as it was that he landed high and nailed him in the face. And you can't do that. It doesn't matter what the sport is. You can't come in high and tight, whether it's baseball, hockey, or anything else, especially basketball.
I know you just said, Milwaukee's playing Chicago tough, but if we're being realistic, no Kevin Love, 2 games without J.R. Smith, you're a little scared of Chicago right now, aren't you?
No, I don't think so. Look, we all knew this was going to be a tough series going in against Chicago, and history tells you that Chicago is going to win this series. No one's ever come back from 3-0. So it's got to happen at some point. But I will say this, is the more I watch Rose, the more I see him play more minutes and chalk up more minutes, things seem to be a little bit more difficult for him every time he's out on the floor. I'm still trying to figure out what happened in the last game and how they weren't, how Milwaukee just dominated them. And every time you thought that the Bulls were going to come back or make it a close game, especially down the stretch, they were there and they were ready for the challenge on the road. So Chicago's got issues. I think they've got some injury issues on top of what's going on. Gasol doesn't look like Gasol. Noah. There are issues that are going on there in Chicago that don't make them look like maybe how dangerous they possibly could be. But I will say this, if the Cavs and Bulls get into this series and the Bulls are able to finish off the Bucks, that every game is going to be close. It's just the way Chicago plays, and I think that's what makes them kind of a special team. So I ripped them apart, but I still think it's going to be a close series.
Andy Baskin out of Cleveland, at Andy_Baskin on Twitter, midday co-host on 92.3 The Fan, also of News Channel 5. Andy, in regards to Johnny Manziel and the Cleveland Browns, is he done getting that opportunity to be the starter there?
No, absolutely not. No, I think going into camp, he's going to absolutely have a chance to be the starter, depending on what happens in the draft. That's the whole thing. And if they go out and they figure out a way to get up in the top 3 or 4, or even the top 2, and they decide they're going to get Mariota, then that changes the ball game. Then I wouldn't be surprised if he's not here, or they traded him, or they did something. But as of right now, he is going to have every opportunity in the world to try to win a job going into camp. There's no question about it.
Just because they're that desperate?
Well, yeah.
Or do they still see
part
something?
of it is. And the other thing is, if you're Ray Farmer, do you want to be the general manager that wasted the 22nd pick on a guy that everyone had high hopes on?
Because you got a cute
want him
text
to work
message.
out. General managers don't want to fail, and they especially don't want to fail on 2 first-round picks from 1 year.
Oof. All right, so a lot of rumors in the draft have been that they will try to go up and get Mariota, will they? Can they?
I think it's a lot of smoke right now. And I don't know that they've got the firepower to do it. If they're going to do it and try to get up to 2, the rumor is they're going to have to give up 19, 12, and next year's first-round pick. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns. They cannot afford to be giving up 3 first-round picks for a guy that you might have question marks about. Does anyone think he's Andrew Luck? Does anybody think either one of these guys at the top of the draft, whether it's Winston or Mariota, that they're going to be a guy that's going to be able to change a franchise overnight, especially a team like the Cleveland Browns? I don't think that's the case. And I think slow and steady would win the race for the Browns this year if they just stay pat at 12 and if they just take their next pick after that. I think they need to stand pat. They do have some assets, and they make the draft a little bit interesting for a draft that doesn't feel that interesting, but they need to stand pat.
Woo. Always enjoyed talking to our guy, Andy Baskin in Cleveland, News Channel 5, 92.3 The Fan on Twitter, at Andy_Baskin on Twitter. And Andy, thanks for sneaking us in between radio and TV today, man. Really appreciate your time as always.
No worries. Never sneak me in. Anytime you guys need anything, please call. Please call.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks.